They won't tell you this at your regular doctor's visit, and frankly, some shy away from the truth. But let me be blunt, most older people don't just fade away after 80 due to some inevitable grand illness. Instead, they struggle to live vibrantly beyond this age because of a constellation of subtle, often hidden health shifts that quietly, insidiously chip away at their fundamental vitality. These aren't always glaring issues that light up on a routine blood test or an annual physical. They're deeper, more personal, and profoundly impactful. My name is Dr. Blake Morgan. I'm a urologist and men's health specialist, and for over 3 decades, I've had the privilege and sometimes the heartbreak of working with aging patients across this country. I've dedicated my career to understanding the intricate ways the human body changes as we grow older, particularly concerning intimacy, hormonal balance, and the very essence of long-term vitality. And through this extensive experience, one of the biggest silent threats I've seen is precisely this. Too many older adults, often unknowingly, abandon vital aspects of their physiological well-being, and with it, a major key to their overall health and longevity. Today, I'm pulling back the curtain on 4 of these critical, hidden health reasons that often prevent older adults from not just reaching, but truly thriving into their late 80s, 90s, and beyond. What I'm about to share may fundamentally change how you perceive your own health, your body, and your future from this moment forward. Before we get started, if you care about staying sharp, healthy, and fiercely independent as you age, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss important, actionable advice tailored just for you. And if this message truly resonates with you, if it sparks a recognition or a new understanding, type the number 1 in the comments. If not, type 0. Your feedback helps me create content that truly supports your health and well-being. Now let's dive into the first, often unspoken consequence. Reason 1. Undiagnosed and unaddressed prostate and urinary dysfunction, one of the most persistent, yet shamefully overlooked, factors silently undermining the health and longevity of older adults, particularly men, is undiagnosed or unaddressed prostate issues and their cascading effects on urinary function. When I first began practicing urology over 3 decades ago, I certainly didn't expect so many of my patients to eventually confide in me about something so deeply private, yet so critical to their physical and mental health. The relentless disruption of their sleep due to multiple nighttime bathroom visits, a frustratingly weaker urinary stream, or that uncomfortable, perpetual sensation of bladder pressure. I recall vividly one man, a former high school football coach in his early 70s. Physically, he was still quite fit, and mentally, he was as sharp as a tack. But he sat across from me, his shoulders slumped, and confessed, "Doc, I just figured I didn't need that part of life anymore. And now I'm paying the price." He'd been waking up 4 or 5 times a night, sometimes more, just to use the bathroom, and he simply couldn't comprehend why his once reliable body had betrayed him. He assumed it was just old age. What he, and indeed what most men, don't fully realize is that consistent activity and proper flushing of the prostate gland plays a crucial dynamic role in its proper functioning. The prostate is not merely a passive gland sitting in the body, it's a living, dynamic organ. It produces fluid, it expands and contracts, and like any system, it suffers when neglected. Without regular stimulation and release, prostate fluid can stagnate. This stagnation creates the perfect, unwelcome environment for inflammation, swelling, and eventually, the kind of chronic pressure that disrupts everything from comfortable urination to sexual performance. You might feel it as a persistent sensation of a heavier bladder, a notably weaker or hesitant urinary stream, or an uncomfortable sense of fullness that just won't go away. These aren't just minor annoyances. They are early, critical warning signals. And here's the dangerous part. Chronic prostate congestion can quietly escalate into more serious, debilitating conditions like benign prostatic hyperplasia, or BPH, which affects nearly 50% of men over 60 and almost 90% of men over 80. Left unaddressed, BPH can lead to severe urinary retention, painful bladder infections, bladder stones, and in extreme cases, even the need for catheterization or irreversible kidney damage. That same man I mentioned, the former football coach, eventually needed surgery to relieve the extreme pressure. It was a major intervention, something that, had we addressed the underlying issues earlier through simple, consistent habits and attention to prostate health, might have been entirely avoided. This isn't just about localized discomfort or a trip to the bathroom, it's about systemic health and overall quality of life. Chronic urinary issues mean severely fragmented sleep, which then impacts every other bodily system: immunity, cognitive function, mood, and energy levels. It generates constant anxiety and a profound erosion of quality of life and independence. Imagine mapping out every social outing around bathroom availability or dreading long car rides. It's a hidden, yet massive, drain on vitality that often goes unmentioned, yet impacts millions, quietly limiting their ability to truly live beyond 80 with dignity and freedom. Reason 2. Declining cognitive clarity and mental fog due to lack of brain stimulation. The second hidden reason older people struggle to live vibrantly past 80 is a subtle but profoundly pervasive decline in cognitive clarity, often presenting as what I call mental fog. This isn't just the natural, graceful slowing of age. It's frequently a brain that's being starved of optimal stimulation, crucial neurochemical balance, and vital blood flow. I had a patient, a retired university professor in his late 60s. He wasn't complaining about his body, his physical checkups were good, but he sat across from me, his brow furrowed, and simply said, "Doc, I don't feel like myself anymore. I walk into a room and forget why I'm there. I lose my train of thought mid-sentence during conversations. I used to be so sharp, so articulate. Is this just old age taking its toll?" It's a question I hear with increasing frequency. And yes, aging naturally brings some cognitive changes, but what most people, even highly educated, health-conscious adults, don't know is that sexual activity, including self-stimulation, plays a powerful and often overlooked role in protecting and enhancing brain function. Here's the science. When you engage in self-pleasure, your brain orchestrates the release of a complex cocktail of potent neurochemicals: dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and norepinephrine. All of these are directly and intricately linked to critical brain functions like memory recall, sustained focus, decision-making, and emotional regulation. These aren't just feel-good chemicals in the moment. They actively help to build and protect delicate neural connections. They stimulate crucial blood flow to the brain's frontal lobes where executive functions reside, and they help to reduce cortisol, the insidious stress hormone that, in high and chronic amounts, can actually damage and shrink brain cells. Now imagine what happens when you remove those natural, brain-protective chemical surges from your life, especially over an extended period, for weeks, months, or even years. Over time, this consistent deprivation can subtly, but effectively, dull your mental edge. You may find it harder to concentrate on tasks, harder to process new information, harder to retrieve names or facts, or even harder to simply feel motivated to engage with mentally stimulating activities. It doesn't happen overnight. It creeps in slowly, insidiously. First, you forget minor details, then you misplace important items, then you start to doubt your mind entirely. And in that insidious doubt, something far worse can take root: fear. I've seen patients spiral into profound anxiety and even clinical depression simply because they believed they were succumbing to an irreversible cognitive decline, when in reality, their brain was starved of stimulation, emotional release, and vital neurochemical balance. Furthermore, for men, there's an added hormonal dimension. Testosterone, a hormone deeply tied to memory, decisiveness, problem-solving, and overall vitality, can decline faster when sexual activity drops to near zero. Testosterone isn't just about libido, it's about your cognitive sharpness, your energy levels, your muscle strength, and your very sense of self. And yes, frequent, healthy ejaculation can help regulate and preserve healthy testosterone levels as you age. Some cutting-edge studies have even begun linking reduced sexual activity in older adults to early signs of cognitive decline, and in some cases, even to a heightened risk of dementia. Now, let me be very clear. I'm not saying stopping masturbation causes Alzheimer's, but I am saying this: when the brain is deprived of this unique combination of stimulation, emotional release, and hormonal support, it becomes profoundly more vulnerable. It loses its natural rhythm, its resilience, its sharpness. And for many people, this fog becomes thick enough to fundamentally alter the way they live, how they interact, how they think, and even how they perceive themselves. The retired professor I mentioned eventually told me he stopped participating in his beloved book club because he couldn't focus on the discussions anymore. These weren't memory problems that immediately required powerful medication. They were often symptoms of a life disconnected from physical intimacy, even with oneself. And here's the tragic part: these impacts are often avoidable. You don't need expensive pills or complex therapies. Sometimes it starts by simply reconnecting with your body, giving it the profound attention it quietly craves. Because when you stimulate the body, you profoundly awaken the brain. Reason 3: chronic sleep deprivation and its systemic impact. The third, an equally insidious, hidden reason older people struggle to live vibrantly past 80 is chronic sleep deprivation. Not just from fragmented sleep caused by bladder issues, but from a broader and often unacknowledged lack of the body's natural sleep triggers. Far too many older adults simply resign themselves to poor sleep, believing it's an unavoidable, even normal, part of aging. But this systemic exhaustion has far-reaching, detrimental consequences that quietly and relentlessly undermine every aspect of their health and longevity. I vividly remember a patient in his late 60s who came to me after months of debilitating, fragmented sleep. He looked utterly worn out, his skin pale, his eyes heavy with frustration. "Doc," he said, his voice raspy with fatigue, "I fall asleep easily enough, but then I wake up at 2 a.m. sharp, like I've been shot out of a cannon. Then I just lie there, mind racing, staring at the ceiling, waiting for morning to mercifully arrive." We ran every test imaginable. His labs were clean, no obstructive sleep apnea, no major red flags anywhere. But when I gently, cautiously asked him about his intimate life, he looked away, his face coloring slightly. "That part of me," he muttered, "is just over, has been for years." What he failed to realize, and what many people miss entirely, is that sleep is not just about closing your eyes and lying still. It's an incredibly complex neurohormonal process, and one of the most effective, natural triggers for initiating and sustaining deep, restorative sleep is something most people simply forget about or consciously abandon after a certain age. Orgasm. During climax, your body orchestrates a symphony of calming neurochemicals. It releases a profound surge of oxytocin, known as the cuddle hormone, which promotes feelings of relaxation and bonding. Prolactin levels rise, leading to a natural drowsiness. Endorphins flood your system, acting as natural sedatives and pain relievers. This is a perfect chemical cocktail, masterfully designed by nature to shift the nervous system from a state of stress and vigilance to one of profound rest and repair. Simultaneously, cortisol, the primary stress hormone responsible for anxiety and wakefulness, significantly drops. Your breathing slows, your heart rate steadies, and your muscles relax deeply. You enter the ideal physiological state for truly deep, healing sleep. Now, imagine intentionally cutting that powerful process out of your life entirely, not just for a night or a week, but for months, for years, even decades. That's precisely what happens when older adults stop engaging in regular self-stimulation. The body loses a potent, natural tool it once effortlessly relied on, and what often fills that gaping void. Often, it's persistent restlessness, gnawing frustration, endless tossing and turning, and hours spent staring at the ceiling in the pre-dawn hours. Some turn to increasingly potent sleeping pills, often with unwanted side effects. Others simply accept chronic exhaustion as their grim new normal. But the consequences of this chronic poor sleep extend far beyond just feeling tired. Persistent sleep deprivation systematically weakens the entire immune system, making you far more susceptible to infections and slower to recover. It accelerates cognitive decline, contributing to memory lapses and difficulty concentrating. It significantly raises the risk of severe chronic conditions like heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and hypertension. Moreover, it increases vulnerability to debilitating anxiety and clinical depression. In older adults specifically, chronic poor sleep contributes to a higher incidence of falls due to impaired coordination, exacerbates memory issues, and directly impacts the loss of independence. I've seen countless patients who once led active, engaged, fulfilling lives slowly withdraw, not because of any major diagnosed illness, but simply because they were too profoundly exhausted to function, too drained to engage, too tired to truly live. And here's where it gets truly alarming. Many of them had no idea they were missing the one thing that used to help them sleep soundly. Not a drug, not a complex supplement, but their own body's incredibly effective, built-in release valve. Masturbation may seem like a small, even trivial or embarrassing act, but for many, it can literally be the difference between 4 hours of fragmented, exhausting sleep and 7 hours of deep, healing, and life-extending rest. The patient I spoke of, after reconnecting with this vital part of himself, told me, "Doc, I sleep like I did 30 years ago. I didn't realize how much I needed that release. I thought I was just getting old and destined for sleepless nights." That's the core of the problem. Too many people mistake biological neglect for the inevitable processes of aging, and they suffer silently as a result. If you find yourself lying awake at night, mind racing, muscles tight, hours dragging by, ask yourself, when was the last time your body felt fully relaxed, fully let go? Sometimes the answer isn't a new medication or a complicated breathing app. Sometimes it's about rediscovering an old, natural rhythm your body still remembers if you only give it permission. Hidden health reason 4. Eroding self-worth and disconnection from body ownership, perhaps the most profound, and certainly the most unspoken, hidden reason why many older people struggle to live vibrantly beyond 80 is the quiet, insidious erosion of their self-worth, coupled with a profound disconnection from their own bodies. This isn't often discussed in clinical settings. It's a deeply personal, internal struggle that can subtly, yet fundamentally, undermine all other health efforts and a person's very will to thrive. I'll never forget a quiet, poignant conversation I had with a patient in his late 70s. He was a retired school principal, a man once known for his sharp intellect, his confident demeanor, the kind of individual who effortlessly commanded a room. But when he came in for a routine checkup, something in his posture had fundamentally changed. His shoulders were slightly hunched, his eyes a little dimmer, his once vibrant energy muted. As we talked, he sighed deeply and said, almost to himself, "Doc, I don't really feel like I live in this body anymore. I feel like I'm just inhabiting it, waiting for it to finally give out." That sentence stayed with me, resonating deeply, because what he described is not uncommon. I've heard variations of it from both men and women, often in different words, but always with the same underlying, heartbreaking truth. Somewhere along the way, they stopped feeling at home in their own skin. And too often, this profound disconnection begins with a quiet, private silence, with giving up self-intimacy, brushing it off as no longer necessary, too late in life, or something I've simply outgrown. But here's what truly happens when you stop touching your own body in that deeply personal way. When you stop paying attention to it in a sexually intimate fashion, you begin to disconnect from it. This separation occurs slowly, quietly, but can sometimes become profoundly entrenched. Self-touch isn't just about fleeting physical pleasure, it's about presence. When you stimulate your body, even gently, even with no other goal than to feel, to acknowledge its aliveness, you send a powerful signal to your nervous system. I am still here, I still matter. My body is still an integral part of my identity, not just a decaying vessel I'm waiting to leave behind. Without that fundamental connection, something profound changes. A kind of emotional and psychological distance forms between you and your physical self. It becomes easier to ignore small aches and pains, easier to stop looking in the mirror, easier to believe that this particular chapter of life isn't worth nurturing, isn't worth investing in. And that, in my clinical experience, is perhaps the most dangerous loss of all: the gradual, silent loss of your own intrinsic sense of self-worth. I've seen this insidious disconnection lead to profound emotional numbness, a deep-seated shame about the process of aging itself, a withdrawal from any form of physical affection, even from loved ones, and tragically, even a complete loss of motivation for basic self-care. Patients stop exercising, they lose interest in nutritious eating, they neglect their appearance, even dressing with intention. Why bother, they often think, when this body no longer feels like it belongs to me or is worth the effort? One woman in her early 70s told me she hadn't touched herself since menopause. "I just stopped feeling like a woman," she confided, "and the less I touched myself, the more I felt like I disappeared." That word "disappeared" hit hard, because that's exactly what happens for many older adults who stop engaging with their physical selves in this intimate way. They don't just lose pleasure, they lose identity, visibility, a fundamental sense of aliveness and relevance. This silent erosion of self-worth directly impacts one's adherence to all other healthy habits, making the struggle to live vibrantly past 80 exponentially harder and more emotionally draining. And here's the part I need you to hear very clearly: it doesn't have to be this way. Reclaiming your body through self-touch isn't about trying to be sexual in the way you were at 20. It's about profoundly honoring the life force still present within you. It's about making a powerful internal declaration: I am still here, I still feel, I still deserve to be seen, to be acknowledged, even by myself. When you reconnect with your body, even in the absolute privacy of your own home, you begin to actively reverse that quiet erosion, that internal erasure. You remind yourself that aging is not a vanishing act, that your inherent worth didn't expire with your youth. You begin to come home to yourself again, and that, perhaps, is the most healing and empowering act of all. These 4 hidden health reasons: undiagnosed and unaddressed prostate and urinary dysfunction, declining cognitive clarity due to lack of vital brain stimulation, the pervasive impact of chronic sleep deprivation, and the silent erosion of self-worth and body ownership, are not always discussed in a typical doctor's visit. Yet they profoundly, consistently, and collectively contribute to why many older people struggle to live vibrantly and independently beyond 80. They are deeply intertwined, and the powerful truth is that proactively addressing one often positively impacts all the others. My message to you is simple, yet urgent. Your body, regardless of age, is still capable, still responsive, and still profoundly deserving of your attention, especially in these often ignored, deeply personal areas. Reclaiming intimacy with yourself isn't about indulgence. It's about robust circulation, sharp mental clarity, stable hormonal balance, profound emotional grounding, resilient immune defense, and a strong, unwavering sense of identity. It's not a luxury. It's a fundamental, essential form of self-care, a powerful declaration that you are still profoundly alive in this body and still responsible for its well-being, its vitality, and its continued flourishing. One patient, a woman in her late 70s, once told me with tears in her eyes, "Dr. Morgan, I didn't realize how much I missed feeling like myself until I finally touched that part of me again after all these years." That's what this is truly about. Not just clinging to life, but feeling alive in every fiber of your being. Not just passively surviving the years, but actively inhabiting them with presence, with dignity, with joy, and with robust health. So if you've forgotten this vital part of you, or buried it under layers of societal expectations, or perhaps silently judged it as no longer relevant, I invite you now to reconsider, to reconnect, to remember that your body is still listening, still capable, still deserving of your deepest care. Start small, start with curiosity, start with kindness, but most importantly, start. Because in choosing to consciously care for this part of yourself again, you're not only protecting your physical health, you're reclaiming your emotional well-being, your mental sharpness, and ultimately, your vibrant, meaningful life. If this powerful message resonated with you today, don't keep it to yourself. Please like this video, share it widely with someone who might desperately need to hear it, and leave a comment below to let me know your thoughts. Whether you agree, disagree, or have important questions, your voice matters, and your story might just be the beacon that helps someone else feel seen and understood on their own journey.